Welcome back to the Thriving Leader Series. I'm your host, Jacqui Bishop, and today our guest experts, plural, is Wade Bruffey and Zoltan Sarda. So Wade is the co-founder and CEO of is one of the co-founders and CEO of GoMobi.work. He has spent his career helping founders, leaders, and innovators create and scale purpose-driven businesses. He runs a business and life coaching practice for entrepreneurs and professionals, and his clients have gone on to make great impact as leaders and coaches in their organizations and communities. And Zoltan is also a co-founder of GoMobi.work, as well as its chief coaching officer. He is an internationally recognized teacher, program developer, and coach with more than 30 years in the field. His work over the last 15 years has focused on developing systems within large, growing organizations to effectively provide mentorship and coaching to leaders, managers, and employees to support their mission-aligned effectiveness and personal and professional well-being. Whoa, wowie, you guys. I'm glad you're here with us today.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqui. Appreciate the warm welcome.
Absolutely. So my first question for you guys is, how do you define thriving?
Well, when we first found out about this, and first of all, it's lovely to be introduced to you, Jacqui. We're thrilled to be here. Thank you again for having us. When we first found out about the topic of your speaker series, we were very excited to see, because this is something that Zoltan and I talk about a lot. And it's something that most of our clients reach out to us about. They want to help their company, their team, themselves thrive. And so really, thriving for us has a lot to do with fulfillment and feeling like every day our experience is something that we're happy with. Feeling engaged in our life is what it means to us to feel like we're thriving. And so in a work context, this happens oftentimes not by accident. It's a really intentional thing that we need to, as leaders, need to do, is to make a space to thrive at work for ourselves and for the people that we work with. So that is what we mean when we say thriving around here.
Great. I love the use of the word fulfillment, because that is like such an indicator of like if something needs to shift in your reality in your work life, or if you've kind of gotten there and you're able to get into that brain state where like you've done it, you're fulfilled. So I really appreciate that word.
Zoltan and I are big fans of the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Do you know him?
No, tell us more.
He's the original, he's the person that coined the term flow. So a lot of stuff out there about flow, but really the element of that we key into a lot of the times is that it's that feeling like we're engaged with the moment to moment experience of our life, which brings that sense of flow and fulfillment. So that's something that we're very excited about. So perfect example right there.
And the work he did in the later part of his life was really focused on the connection between flow and happiness.
Okay.
What he says is that people need to be, for happiness to happen, people need to be engaged in flow on a regular basis in their life. So how to create systems and processes where employees or anybody in an organization can really tap into that sense of flow over time.
Great. Well, I'm definitely going to want to come back and talk about that before we finish here. So from your guys' point of view, how is organizational development related to thriving?
And so one of the things, another core in theory that we have, in addition to Csikszentmihalyi's work, is the work of Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. They're from the University of Rochester, and they have the self-determination theory.
Okay.
It was really the sort of the core of Daniel Pink's book Drive. But when you look into their work, one of the things that is really key to this, and I substitute the word well-being in terms of thrive, like that sense of well-being is such a core part of thriving. And just again, to give the 20-second overview of their work, it's really around this idea of motivation, and again, that self-determination and well-being is really based on a sense of autonomy, sense of competence, and a sense of meaning. And the thing I also like about we've really dialed into our work here is that sense of meaning is around two things. It's about what are we doing, what's the work that we're doing, but it's also the relational piece. It's the meaning that exists between people in an organization or in a group. And so those things are sort of core principles to how we've been working with companies to enhance that sense of well-being, thriving, and it's just, it's really the thing I like about this work is that it's really diagnostic in some ways. It has, there's three principles that we can look at. Is if somebody's not thriving, is it something to do about their sense of autonomy? Mm-hmm. Is it something to do with their sense of lack of a sense of competence? Or is there something if somebody is not feeling connected into the organization, how can we address those?
So it sounds like thriving is, when you look at it, it's at multiple layers, like the autonomous, like within, and then also in the relating amongst the team and the organization.
Absolutely.
Wade, anything to add?
I just was going to say you're a quick learner, Jacqui. That's exactly right.
All right. Yes. So guiding principles. I know this is another concept that you guys work with. How are guiding principles related to thriving?
Yeah, that's the super question, Jacqui. So Zoltan mentioned a few of our favorite folks that have worked on this and done a lot of research. One of the things that we focus on a lot and in our work with companies to date and companies when we get a new client is where the rubber meets the road. So it's great to have a lot of these concepts, but guiding principles are one of the ways that we operationalize some of these ideas to help promote this autonomy, this competency, and this sense of connection. We really work with the guiding principles at their core are a definition of what behaviors we want to see in an organization. And really, when I say we, I'm speaking from the point of view of an organization. We personally, our company, our coaches, we don't tell anybody, we're not prescribing anything. We are simply going in and facilitating an organization's self-understanding of what is it that when we are at our very best. And what we like to say is, what does it look like if I were to come in here and not know anybody, not know any of you? What would I see? What kinds of things would I hear if I walked in and everybody this day was just crushing it? So when we think about what does it look like when we're crushing it, we really begin to understand behaviors that we want to really embody. So a lot of companies go and they have a statement of values. Values are great, but they are very subjective, and each person might interpret a value of loyalty differently. So what we work with businesses to do is help them to develop this shared set of agreements as to when we say that loyalty is our value, how does that look like in practice? And so one way that this is often talked about and a word that we like to use around this is virtues. There's values, which are the conceptual part of it, and there are the virtues or the guiding principles that are these values in practice. So that's how we use guiding principles in an organization.
Thank you.
And I think part of that, just to add, so our process, the way we work through there is working with the leadership team first, getting, and really looking at how can we actualize those core values that they have. And as Wade said, what are the sort of super small grain size descriptions of what that looks like? Once we've done that, then we work with the employees. And so same exact exercise. And what we've often done is the leadership team sits in just listens to that conversation. And then out of the two pieces, out of those two perspectives, we support them in creating some documents that really outline what leadership and frontline workers are seeing as what we're shooting for. So this is one of the, I think, key pieces that I've found in coaching is that often we have different visions. The coach might have one vision of what we're going for, and the employee might have a completely different vision based on some, and so this is putting it into a place where both have clear concept of what we're going for.
Okay,
And
so
that's the starting point.
so what methods do you use to create that, like a common language of success throughout an organization?
So we've taken the core values. So companies often have between 4 and 6 core values.
Okay.
We do this process where we engage again like with the leadership. We engage them in a conversation about how are you defining it? What would you see? It's very specific. What would you see? What would you hear?
Sounds like the senses.
Yeah. Part of it is I actually really think that we need to have almost a video playing in our head when we're thinking about what we're shooting for. And often if things are just sort of textual, written in text, we don't see it. So, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Wade and I act as the scribes. And then out of that, we ask them to think about, so what are some categories here? So underneath your first core value, what are some categories? And so those become sort of your core principle, and then the descriptors become sort of like the specifics around practice. Doing that same thing with the employees, or it could be multiple teams, it could be different, it could be engineering division of an organization versus marketing versus sales, or that kind of thing. And really getting those kinds of clear descriptions, but all around the company's core values. So
Jacqui, have you ever heard of Bushido?
No, tell me more.
Bushido is the code of the samurai from ancient Japan. And Bushido is super interesting. If you've ever read a book by Ben Horowitz, it's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's about startups, about founding a company and creating a company culture. Bushido is the code of the samurai, and the thing that's unique about it is that it's extremely specific. This is a document and a way of life that basically prescribes in each situation, if this happens, this is what you do. This is the just action. And so as a culture, we feel that we've really moved away from a lot of this understanding of what does it look like? How should we behave? What are the norms for our teamwork? And how does that impact the way we not only work with each other, but also the results that we ultimately generate for our clients? Because if we have two separate understandings of something, and we find everybody is well-intentioned, and there's a very, very seldom somebody that is really trying to do something the wrong way. And that's a whole separate story. But really, in the case of helping and supporting people to do their best work, we need to tell them, this is what we're trying to measure up against. This is what our ideal outcome looks like. And so when we talk about organizations and guiding principles, I bet in your audience, there's tons of talented entrepreneurs, tons of thriving leaders. People have probably heard these terms before. It's nothing groundbreaking, really. These concepts have been around for a while. But what the thing that we want to challenge our clients and people out there to do is to start thinking about how can we best support our people in growing towards these things. And so it's much more than creating these definitions. The definitions are very much square one. We need to go in and create our company's Bushido. We need to have this set of things that we do to be our highest, most noble, most productive, most impactful selves. But then we need to, as leaders, give our people the coaching tools to help them really, really thrive. Because without it, it's great to start to, like, how many companies have you worked with or been into that where the values are up on the wall and everybody says, oh yeah, there's our values, great, they're on the wall, and then it ends with that. So that's a challenge, and employees, and more than ever, and companies that are really doing important work in the world, they understand that they need to embody these values and show their people, how do we do this? And then the customers feel that. So it's a way to increase business success. There's many, many stories of it being done brilliantly.
So you actually give the team tools to connect with this Bushido.
That's right.
And we try to get these descriptions of what we're shooting for on one page.
Mhm.
Big proponents of having that piece of paper right on the table when you're having a conversation, so it becomes you're referring to it, you're reflecting on it, you're highlighting things that you have already decided. This is one of the things I think we often do. We'll do these sort of exercises in organizations like this, and that was really nice, really fun, and then we put it on the shelf and we don't refer to it anymore. And so really having that document right in front of coach and employee are sitting down, or a group of people are sitting down, just that reminder of this is what we're going for.
Can you share some of the ways, besides the constant visual reminder, about how you help people connect and embody these principles?
Yeah, so, well, maybe we could talk. A part of this is so once this work has been done around here's the guiding principles. Here are these sort of fine-grained descriptions of what we expect or what we're going for. We also have a protocol that we ask that is part of this work, and that also sits on the table. And
okay.
The thing I like about protocols is if we start with them in a really following them word by word, eventually they become a template for how the conversation goes, and people don't need the protocol as much anymore because they're really familiar with that. This is the process that we go through. But this protocol is really it's actually interesting because when Wade and I were really brainstorming around this work, we were in the middle of pandemic mode and just isolated, and in the space we were in, we always had jigsaw puzzles out. Jigsaw puzzles.
Great.
Something that came up is like, if you think about how two people or three people work on a jigsaw puzzle, it's like everybody has expertise that they bring to it. I might be great with edge pieces, or I might see colors, and other people might see patterns in different ways. But it's this collaborative. You also have the picture on the box. We all know exactly what we're going for, and then we have this collaborative way of thinking about what do we do to get to that piece, and we each have our strengths, our competencies, and we bring them together. So this protocol that we use is, again, starting off with thinking about, in terms of those guiding principles that we've determined. This term that I love, it comes from an old mentor of mine, anthropologist, and what she talked about is that anthropologists often, when they see something in the field, they'll ask the question, what is this the case of? So is this a case of religious beliefs, or is this a case of some kind of cultural other aspect of culture? And so in this dialogue that we encourage people to have is really thinking about, what is this a case of? Is it a case of this core value? Is it a case of this core value? And then sort of whittle down to, now it's actually a case about this this guiding principle or multiple guiding principles. So now we've set the table, we've got the picture of the jigsaw puzzle that we're going for. And then the dialogue becomes a problem-solving conversation where both people have voice. We hire good people. We hire people with expertise and knowledge, and we want to tap that. We want to tap that autonomy that they have. We want to tap that competence so that they're really bringing that forward. As a counterexample of this, a friend of mine works for a very large international corporation, and she talks about the professional learning that they do, which is, and it's all designed around efficiency, which is a key piece of this. But they bring, 100 or 200 people into a room. Everybody has a binder on their chair, and then for 2 or 3 days, somebody stands on stage and reads the binder to them. We're going for the antithesis of that. We want it to be that the two people have their heads together, really thinking about problem solving and giving voice to both. Both should have equal voice. Actually, ideally, the person being coached should have more voice. And again, often in coaching situations, I've seen is that the coach often speaks much more than the person being coached. So we actually want to flip that. And then the protocol ends with reflection. How did it go?
Mhm.
Feel heard? Was it productive? What are some next steps? What are the goals before the next conversation? So that comes out of sort of typical coaching strategies. But that's
Yeah.
what we advocate for.
Awesome. And Wade, you had something to add?
Yeah, I was going to ask Jacqui. I know you've been in part of your entrepreneurial journey and a long professional career before that. Tell us about some of your values and what makes you tick.
Honesty is a really big one that keeps showing up, like the concept of integrity. And the more integrity you can show up with, it seems like the richer life can be.
Mm-hmm. What does integrity look like in practice for you? What do you, and maybe as a two-part question, how do you practice integrity? And then to me, integrity is something that you look for in others as well. Tell us about both of those.
Gosh, wow. Let's see. I guess, honesty, like I mentioned earlier, is a huge part of integrity. The follow through, the showing up, as much as yourself as you can in our weird and wild world. So like finding that authenticity, and that seems like an ingredient for me of integrity. And you had a second question. What was it?
What does integrity look like in your interactions with others? Like when you see somebody else that has high integrity, or what do you look for, like when you're evaluating somebody, maybe as a potential business partner or something like that?
There's an ease of communication is a big one. Like I'm really loving what Zoltan is talking about with like implementing guidelines for a productive and useful communication, if it isn't happening naturally. Like, so for me, when I'm looking at integrity and who I want to work with and things like that, it is very much like, oh, we can communicate very seamlessly and like we're understanding each other very well. And so, but definitely I've been in situations where that's not the case. And it's quite common, I think, for people in the world. And so like having a framework can really get people on the same page so that they can have those productive conversations, even if it didn't actually happen to begin with.
Like that idea of saying the hard thing. If that's one of your guiding principles, then it's like, are you holding back from saying the hard thing? So let's coach into that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Say the hard thing and or find the no, find the yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
So what is each of your favorite tools for reconnecting with thriving? And can you walk us through it? This could either be your personal tool that you like to use for yourself or something that you use in your company.
Well, again, I sort of described it, but I do love that idea of the protocol, because it's whatever the protocol is, the idea of having one that becomes sort of the DNA of the conversation. I think that that's an ideal piece to have. I do think, and we also mentioned this idea of this piece of paper with the guiding principles on it. For me, the thing I love about that is when it's ideally used, it's a living document. So, as we work through conversations or people use it over time, they'll find that some things drop off. This isn't really what we need to focus on, or maybe this is something we need to add. There's a little detail here that we need to add. And I think that dialogue around, just the dialogue around the document becomes really important. It's also thinking about how are we onboarding people. You hire people for their new perspective. So going through this process with folks that are new to the organization about, so what are your take on these guiding principles, doing some of the same work as people come in, that's, instead of, here's what you do in the organization, it's like, here's what our organization is about. Now let's have a conversation about that as your onboarding process.
Thank you. And Wade?
Yeah, that was Zoltan. You brought up so many good things there. I think one thing that what you said made me think of a tool to reconnect with thriving is really reflection. And I think this happens in our own lives a lot of the time. And some of the most effective people that we know are really good at taking a step back and thinking about it. And some of the most effective businesses that we know do the same and encourage their people to do that. So taking a reflective stance every so often, having that as part of your practice, whether it's a practice at your business or a practice for yourself, is super important. And really, one of the things that we're stepping into as in our business and how we're supporting leaders is really helping to use those reflections to gather data and inform decision making at the business. Because when you're in the middle of quarterly goals, when you have so many things coming at you and trying to do the best that you possibly can to serve the people that you set out to serve in your life, it can be sometimes daunting to try to take on so much stuff. So really, one of the things that we're working with clients on today is this data collection. So how can we use the information that we're getting from these coaching sessions to better plan what we're doing as a business, to better plan how we need to approach certain performance things. So if there's an ongoing, hey, we're really this particular guiding principle or this particular behavior that we want to see, it's becoming apparent that we're not seeing this particular thing. How can we support our people in getting better at this thing? So to really use that tool of reflection and then add some analysis on top of that, it's really, really valuable. So I would say that, and we could talk for days about our personal thriving practices as well, but it's a great thing. And energy level is one of the most important things in mine. That's a value of mine, I suppose.
Awesome. And so what do you guys have as your biggest or most important takeaway for the thriving leaders in our audience today?
I think that, again, going back to our core theoretical framework around this, is that idea of how do we bring our employees, how do we tap their competence, how do we raise their voices, so that knowledge and skill that we hire them for is the regular part of the conversation. It's really creating much more of that idea of a dialogue rather than sort of one-way communication. I think that's a real piece. And then, understanding that the idea of my own voice as an employee in an organization has to be amplified. That's that sense of autonomy. It gives us, it really gives us, again, it's connected to the meaning. Why am I here? But looking for opportunities to raise people's voices in all aspects of it.
Thank you, Zoltan. Any final words, Wade?
Yeah, it's funny that I'm only just thinking of this, and it's something that we could talk again for so long about. But one thing that I want to encourage the leaders in the audience to really take that step up. One of the things that is really, really different about this work is that it really requires a two-way street, and it requires a level playing field for everybody in the company. So for a lot of organizations that are larger or even smaller, it depends on just the attitude of the leadership. A lot of times people are used to that hierarchical structure. We think that for many reasons related to people's agency and development and feeling like they're fulfilled and competent, we need to throw that hierarchical structure out the window sometimes. So it's really a counterintuitive thing for a lot of leaders. So our challenge to them would be, think about how giving people their own self-determination can really help them grow and contribute better to the team's mission, to the people that the team is serving. So really to challenge your perspective and to open up different opportunities for people to really shine, because that's what we're all about. So
excellent. All about shining.
yes.
All about the vibrancy. So thank you for being here, guys. I want to invite you to tell our audience about your resource that you have for them and how to stay connected.
Yeah, sure, Jacqui. Well, first of all, thanks again. This has been a really great time, and hopefully everybody gets a ton of value out of this. For your listeners, we are doing an enhanced initial consultation. So we'd be happy to speak with leaders, do a diagnostic of your team, any challenges, any growth areas that you want to address in the next 6 to 12 months. We really focus on putting these processes in place. And so we'd be happy to go a step further than our usual first call for your listeners and go to a little bit more of a, here's where we think we can take this, and give them a few tools that they can start using today. So please visit us on our website at www.gomobi.work, W-O-R-K. And we will look to hear from you there. And if now isn't the right time to start taking on a new initiative with your business, please scroll down to the very bottom of the page, and in the bottom right corner, you can join our email list and stay up to date with everything that we're doing. So thank you so much for being here, and we're excited to hear from you.
Great. Well, I encourage everyone to go check that out, to stay connected with these two awesome individuals. And thank you so much for being here, Wade and Zoltan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacqui. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Jacqui.